All families are complicated, but the holidays, sometimes they make things a little bit worse. How do you deal with holiday hell? And you know, I think it's a little bit easier in retirement, but it's still there. I'm not going to try to tell you today that I have some, answer. I don't have any answers for this. It happens every holiday because all family comes with family drama. You can't help that. My family is no different than any other. I know of very few people that when the entire family gets together, there's not some kind of drama going on. So in this video, I'm going to talk about that holiday hell. And I should make it specific and say family holiday hell. There's really no way to avoid it, but I think there are ways that you can make it a little bit better. Or maybe put things into perspective. Every year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, now it's the Christmas holidays coming up. We're all preparing. We have family coming over. Most families do that. They get together during the holidays. Thanksgiving is always that big thing where you have to avoid political conversations. And Christmas is kind of one of those areas where you really want to be together as a family. But unfortunately, you've got kids, you've got grandkids. I have grandkids. I don't know about everybody else, but I have grandkids, and families all grow and develop. Our grandkids right now are both teenagers. We do have one grandchild that's only 2 years old, so that's a great and wonderful thing when they come over. But of course, at 2 years old, they're like a little ball of energy. But at 17 and 18 years old, or 16 and 18 years old, it's a little bit different story. They're trying to develop their own personality. It's Christmas time. They are not wanting to, listen. They don't understand the importance of this holiday. In most cases, they want to go hang out with friends. And I know how it is. I was the same way when I was growing up. All our holidays, we would get together as a huge family, cousins, uncles, grandma, grandpa, father, everybody would all get together. And our fellowship, I should say, at Christmas was basically everybody getting together to have the big meal. We hung around all day long. The kitchen would get hot. The morning ritual of opening the presents, it went on, but as we got older, it kind of just was, you'd wake up, you'd exchange a gift or two, and then the big event was everybody getting together. And of course, when everybody gets together, there's going to be some drama. We have drama. I'm sure you have drama. There's no way to avoid it. But you can, I think anyway, put things into perspective. Number one, I think it's important to remember the reason that you're there. Of course, Christmas, we're celebrating the birth of Christ for those who celebrate the Christian religion, which I do. And that's really the main reason for the season. But in reality, in the real world, it comes down to you've got young children. They don't quite understand that reasoning. So it's also a time for the entire family to get together. We try to deal with all of our family drama before that time, but you can't help it. When the day comes, there's going to be some drama coming along with it. I do want to express that it's not all bad. Some of this family drama has, in my case anyway, become some of my fondest memories. Little things that people do, getting together after a meal, playing a game, the funny antics that go on, remembering all the embarrassing things that your children and grandchildren do. That's one of my favorite things is bringing up old embarrassing pictures. Not so great now because, all my kids and my grandkids are getting older. And so, I can't embarrass my children in front of their girlfriend or boyfriend anymore because, they're all older and married. But it's still fun to hang around. even though the parents kind of understand this, they forget that this is all novel to the children. And the children will remember this family drama. But children have a hard time understanding the perspective or putting all this into perspective. I think that's important to understand, why are we thankful on Thanksgiving? Why do we have Thanksgiving? To go back to the last one. For Christmas, why are we giving gifts? Why is everybody getting together? Young children, they need to be told the reason for this gathering. Otherwise, they may not quite understand it. And we'd like to do that. This is one of the only times that we all sit down together and have a large family meal. And I think that's kind of important to do. Never pass up the chance to mend fences with your family. And now is as good of a time as any. I think that's very important. So it's important to know that family is always going to be there. It's not like they go away and you don't talk to them again for another year. Hopefully, this season brings about open communication, enhanced talking amongst each other, better feelings about anything that might have happened in the past. And it's kind of funny how all this drama that happens during the Christmas time with families, it can kind of have a tendency to bring people together after the fact. Have you noticed that? I know that I've noticed it. There's unforeseen benefits of family trauma. As unlikely as it may seem to be, it's the truth. For instance, earlier this year, my mother-in-law passed. It was a big deal for our entire family. And much of my family on my wife's side, they'd kind of grown apart. There were people that weren't talking to each other very much. And in an odd sense, the passing of my mother-in-law, it kind of brought the family together. And ever since then, we've been communicating with relatives, cousins, again, in ways that we'd never done before. So even though we have to suffer through family drama and trauma throughout these seasons, I think there's good that can come from it. You never know when this Christmas could be your last. And I want to tell a little story to kind of make this point, and I'll try not to make it too long, but it's very personal to me, and I think it's important to help put things into perspective when it comes to getting together with family and making the effort at Christmas time to kind of mend fences and talk to people. It was 2008, and I think I said in another video how when I grew up I idolized my father. But unfortunately, my father had a lifelong battle with alcoholism. He suffered alcoholism terribly. It destroyed relationships, families, you name it. But for some reason, he could never stop drinking. And he's what you would call a functional alcoholic. So he would still go to work. He would still do those things. But then every single weekend, our activity on the weekend, Saturday morning, was waking up and going and looking for my dad's car to figure out where he had crashed it into a ditch. And I know that's kind of terrible to say at Christmas time, but just to put this in perspective, nonetheless, all that being said, I still idolize my father. But over time, as I grew older, I realized, some of the issues that he had, and we kind of drifted apart. We didn't really talk very much anymore. In fact, pretty much shortly after I went into the military, our communication became very sparse. I invited him to my wedding with my wife, so he was there for that. We went to live with him, or I shouldn't say live with him, live in the same city as him when I was stationed in the local area. In fact, I actually took a trip overseas so that I could get to that post. We had kind of grown apart. He had moved on with his life. He had a new family at that point in time. And so my wife and I kind of got, pushed out and were pretty much just fending for ourselves. And that made us grow apart even more. And so we didn't talk for years and years. So along comes 2008. I had been working at a helicopter test pilot course. I was an instructor at this test pilot course. I'd already retired from the Army, and I was about 4 years into this career. Well, at that point in time, I'd gotten an offer to do a contract job overseas. So I was going to go to Iraq and train Iraqi flight students, which, I thought was going to be a good thing. It was a change of career at that point in time. They made it worth, the effort to go overseas. Keep in mind that I had, done 22 years in the Army and went overseas for nothing. And now these contractors were offering me a whole lot of money to go overseas for a year and train Iraqi flight students. This was at the end of the Iraq War, or I should say between the second and third portion. So I was pretty excited about that. But unfortunately, I was supposed to ship out at the beginning of the next year. This was 2008. This was December of 2008, about this time actually. So I had already left my other job. I'm getting ready to ship out to Iraq. I was going to Fort Benning to do a whole bunch of in-processing, because you have to get security clearances. You have to get, even though you're a civilian contractor, you still have to get like combat gear, flak vest and helmets and things like that because, well, it was a war zone. So I was going into a war zone to train Iraqi flight students. So there was some preparation involved. Well, about this time in December of 2008, I am already, my life is in an upheaval. Everything is turned around. We're trying to get ready for Christmas. At the same time, I'm preparing to go overseas for a year. It was going to be a big deal. And I got the news that my father had a stroke. So this was sudden, and it demanded a decision. And I also think I expressed this in a previous video, but for those of you who have not seen that one, I will say that he had a stroke. They shipped him to the hospital. He was on all kinds of machines, and they were calling me because I was the only family that he had. There was nobody else. I'm his only son, and they were telling me that he was hooked up to a bunch of machines, and that was really the only thing keeping him alive. So I was forced to make the decision on the spot for them to unplug the machines. And so they did, and he died. So in the midst of all this, and it's now Christmas time, I now have to go back across the United States and make all the arrangements for my father's, make his final arrangements. It was a terrible time. There was a whole bunch of people in the family, and so I had to go back. And of course, because of his alcoholism, that's why I brought this up. He had no retirement funds. He wasn't even retired. He was 67 years old, and he had died in a travel trailer. And they only knew that he died because his landlord came to collect the rent, and they assumed he'd been there about 3 days or so. Nobody knows for sure. And so that basically turned that Christmas into the Christmas from hell. But, the point that I'm making here is, even with all that, it actually helped bring our family closer together and make me appreciate Christmas even more. Because from that point forward, that event, because of the suddenness of it, it made me, or helped me to understand that, you never know. I've stated this before, tomorrow is not promised. So I was forced to say, okay, whatever I do, everything that has to be done or making amends with the family, it has to be done now. And so ever since then, I think that since we've been back, I believe anyway, our Christmases have been a little bit better. Now, of course, every single year, My wife wants to decorate and everything needs to be just right. She wants it to look really nice for the family. So of course there's going to be that little bit of drama. Of course, I like to go outside and hook up some Christmas decorations. I'm like the Clark W. Griswold. I'll stay outside all Christmas long. Unfortunately, even though we just went through a cold snap and last night it was below freezing, oddly enough, by Christmas time, we'll be wearing t-shirts again. But we're going to don the sweaters and take pictures anyway, even though we'll be sweating inside the sweaters. So all this is just being said as a cautionary tale to say, take the time now to make amends with your family. And there's no way you can avoid the family drama, but you can learn to understand the family drama. And believe it or not, as I get older and I am now retired, I don't mind the family drama at all. I actually am quite amused by it sometimes. So for the younger folks who have not retired, if you're watching this, take heart that over time, the edges are going to smooth out. It's not going to be quite so bad. For those of you who are retired, let me know how you deal with the family drama, or, how do you survive the holiday hell, so to speak, which is not as bad as I want to make it sound, but how do you survive that? What are the little things that you do to help your family out? What are the little things that you do to help enjoy this holiday season? I know that for me, I like to have a fire in the fireplace. I like to sample all the foods that my wife is cooking because she does a really good job of cooking a whole bunch of different stuff. I like to watch our children and grandchildren looking at their gifts or unwrapping their gifts. And then with the grandchildren, playing with them afterwards. I like getting together with the family after our meal and playing a game in the evening time. And those are all things that you can do to make the holidays a little bit more enjoyable and kind of avoid the holiday hell. I hope this video found you in good spirits. And if so, drop me a comment. Tell me how your Christmases go. What is your holiday hell? And be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, see ya.